prostitution is gender inequity. And prostitution is simply one way that men get to have that kind of authority and power over women. The community thinking that women should be accessible to men and provide sexual services at any time and in whatever way a man wants. So prostitution and sex trafficking is everywhere in Illinois. It just looks different. You know, we might see pimps, for example, hanging out outside of DCFS foster care group homes. Human trafficking occurs in the same ways and with the same tactics here in Chicago as it does in Thailand or it would in Europe. Oftentimes people think that human trafficking is about a child being kidnapped and put in a brothel in India, for example, and that's true, but the same kinds of tactics and strategies are used here by pimps who have never heard of China. They are targeting people who they can get away with it. They're looking for particularly young people who look like they're in distress, who are vulnerable for some reason, like maybe running away from home, who may have suffered child sexual assault, and who look like they're desperate and need help.
Either financially or they don't feel like anybody cares about them.
And pimps do the same sorts of things here as they do all over the world. They say, I'm going to help you, you deserve to be loved, I'm going to take care of you, and you'll be safe with me. If somebody's engaged in prostitution, our entire community seems to agree that anything can happen to them. It doesn't matter what happens to them. They can't complain and they have to accept it.
If a woman has been abused in some way, then she's much more likely to think that this is an option instead of respecting herself to the point where she won't allow this to happen or unless she's forced to.
It is a gender imbalance, and it's definitely one of the reasons why prostitution thrives. We passed a law that allows people with prostitution convictions in Illinois to ask a judge to vacate those convictions if they can prove that it was the result of sex trafficking. And so vacating a conviction means that a judge makes a decision that that conviction was wrong. It was an unjust thing. The person should never have been found guilty of the crime of prostitution because of the wrong things that have been done to them. Decades and decades have focused their resources on arresting prostituted people, that they are an easy target, they can be picked up and spoken to any kind of way, detained, incarcerated, charged with very few consequences.
I've heard stories of officers treating victims like they, don't matter, not giving them any respect, even soliciting services from victims because they think they can take advantage of them and they don't understand that this person needs to be respected just like everybody else.
Because that has been the response that they've always done, I think that it's really hard to change long-standing attitudes and patterns.
I think I would continue to work towards passing laws that would give the police a better understanding of how to treat victims. There are already some great laws in the state of Illinois, even laws that will help our trafficking survivors get their record expunged of especially prostitution charges, which is absolutely awesome. I think there's probably more like nitty-gritty work that needs to be done with making sure that the rights are taken care of and that people who want these types of services are the ones who are getting punished.
Governments could play a huge role. We passed a law that decriminalized all young people engaged in prostitution under the age of 18. It means they can't be charged or punished for that crime anymore. And it's not even a crime, it's that they're being exploited. And what we're trying to do is have folks think about them as human beings who are worthy of special services and be able to go after the people who are profiting from youth who are engaged in prostitution. I think another major problem is very closely related, and it's public attitudes and beliefs. Our culture is very good at lying to us about sexual assault and prostitution. And lots of people believe all the wrong things about those two issues. And because they believe those lies, they don't think they have to take action or care. When we focus all of our time and attention on blaming women in prostitution, who's being ignored? The pimps, the brothel owners, the strip club owners, the people who buy sex? They're all over there getting ignored. And so that process has got to be turned around. Governments need to fork over some of that money to start creating new specialized services for prostituted and trafficked people. They can't be in mainstream services. They're not right for them. They need their own with survivors present. If we had a lot of community-based drop-in centers and long-term safe homes in all of our communities, can you imagine how much easier it would be for someone to leave the lifestyle if they had the chance?
There are so many people who could use the help, whether it be just help reestablishing their life or, learning a skill, or even preventative measures like mentoring somebody.
And right now, there is nothing for them in many communities around the nation, and particularly here in Illinois. We only have 12 beds in Illinois for women and girls who have been victims of commercial sexual exploitation. 8 of those are for girls, and 4 of them are for adult women, and that's it.
Major challenges now are having the spaces for people to come and feel safe.
When it's time to do street outreach and reach out to prostituted people, what is it that we're supposed to say to them? So that's where the government could be incredibly helpful. Fund law enforcement to focus their effort on demand and focus their effort on investigation of human trafficking crimes. And the government, our leaders, our elected officials, in not asking, but tell them that that's what they're going to do. The movement has done a good job of bringing survivors into services, meaning that they provide the services, that they are advocates with legislators, that survivors are the ones who are creating their own policy solutions.
All of those efforts are needed. I think a lot can be done with people just being aware of what's happening in their neighborhood and understanding the signs and doing something about it, being brave enough to make a call to the hotline, stepping forward and saying, hey, I don't think this is right. We shouldn't go to a massage parlor, or we shouldn't go to a strip club. It's definitely a cultural shift that needs to happen.
Say that we focused on young people engaged in prostitution, human trafficking victims who are children. They're 17 years old and 363 days old, and in just a few short days they'll be 18, and suddenly our community is going to decide that they're criminals. We need to be able to come up with responses that address human trafficking no matter what the age is or the gender of the person who's being trafficked. We had representatives and senators in the Illinois General Assembly who've normally been very conservative about law and order issues, and they have come to a place where they understand that it's wrong to arrest and rearrest prostituted people. And I will say, on the other side of the prevention equation, we need to prevent people who buy sex right now from doing it again. And so we're advocating that law enforcement focus their resources on actually holding them accountable for those crimes so that they'll spread the word among other people who buy sex that it's not a good idea and we need to stop. This is the most deterrable group of people you're ever going to find because they're mostly upper middle class people with discretionary income, and they can choose to stop anytime they want. I think the first and most important thing is that they should benefit from having close, trusting mentor relationships with other people who have survived trafficking and prostitution. It gives them an opportunity to see that they can be leaders and they can be mentors and they can get out of it and they can live a safe life. And I think that's incredibly important. I think that to the extent that they can take advantage of services that have been created especially for prostituted and trafficked people, that would also increase their wellness into the future. Good support systems and people who understand what trauma is and what it looks like. And those are all conditions that if put in place can set people up to be leaders and thrive. They're the experts in what has happened to them, and they're the experts in what should happen to change and improve the situation.
I promise to be kind.